Welcome back, guys, to another Brave Exvius video. Today we're going over the best gear for Cloud and doing some builds as well for Advent Children Cloud. I know, hot out of the gates, a lot of you guys are really looking forward to learning how to build him. So we're coming here live for you guys with this video once again. And we're going to be starting it off, I guess, for the supports as well as the Patreon and YouTube channel members. You guys are a million likes worth of content here. So the first one we're going to go over here, we're going over budget weapons all the way up to stmrs. We're going to be talking about Ancient Sword and Darksteel Destroyer. So these ones you can get from in-game, right, fighting the new trials. And this is going to be the Ancient Sword, 166 attack sword, has the additional effect of the Harvester, physical damage killer against plants as well as undead monsters. So a little bit of attack. It is a sword you can wear. If you're going up against those monster types, it's something that you're going to be picking up there. The other one, though, is the Darksteel Destroyer. You guys may know about this one. 181 attack great sword with the additional effect of Darksteel Calamity, which gives you 75% Demon Slayer as well as 50% Stone Slayer. The Darksteel Destroyer, a lot of attack there, and the Demon Slayer on it is going to be one of the more common enemy types in the game. You guys could be and should be using this against any monster that has the demon attribute. If you're looking for killer, if you need more killer, this is the weapon for you. Now, moving into more budgety options here. Beyond these two, we have the Supreme Sword of Light. This is 11's Super Trust Master Reward. This is here because it has the Supreme Sword of Light additional effect, which gives you 50% limit burst damage. And even though it's a one-handed weapon, it has a higher than average damage roll range. Most one-handed weapons average out at 1.0. This one, though, averages at 1.05, which means in general it gives you a free 5% damage bonus that you can't get from any other weapon that is a one-handed weapon in Brave Exvius. Now, continuing with the Supreme Sword of Light, 50% limit burst damage sort of attribute, we have the Ultima Blade from FF15. This is going to be Crown Prince Noctis's super TMR. Same sort of thing, 50% LB damage, 174 attack, and 100 MP. So a little bit less attack, but it has that very important LB damage. And we can't forget Fusion Sword, FF7 Advent Children as well here. This is going to be his own super TMR with the additional effect of Limit Break. Version 5, 50% limit burst damage, 190 attack. It is the highest attack out of all of them. If you were to pick and choose, obviously you put Fusion Sword in there with Supreme Sword of Light, but we'll get into that stuff when we go through the builds that I've put up at the end of the video here for you guys. Now, the other ones to talk about other than weapons, we are moving into the armor selection now. So we have Erdwin's Coronet. This is 11's TMR. So both his super TMR and his TMR make an appearance here. This is a 40 attack helmet, which gives 20% limit burst damage. You're building Cloud for LB damage. This is going to be a very solid option for you until you hit limit burst damage cap. Once you acquire enough super teamers and stuff, you'll stop using this and you'll just put a higher attack head on. But until then, you're using the Coronet, and it's going to be a solid investment for you guys there. Now, obviously, Cane Rain's armor shows up as well. Heavy armor, 28 attack, 10% HP, 30% limit burst damage here for AC Cloud. Definitely using this for the LB damage, just like everything else on this list. You want LB damage and attack, and then you got to make room for killers at the end. Now, moving away from that, we are looking for a little bit of true dual wield in our character. So the most budget option here is going to be like something akin to the Hermes Sandals, which is Warrior of Light Bartz's TMR. You could also use Awakened Onion Knight's TMR as well. Both of them give 40 attack and 50% true dual wield. That's the most important part. Hermes Sandals gives 2 LB gauge per turn, whereas Awakened Onion Knight, I do believe, gets a little bit MP refresh per turn, but you're really after the 50% true dual wield there for your Advent Children. I almost said Children. Advent Children Cloud there. Now, that should cap you off, though, and so you need another accessory. Another solid option as a TMR is going to be Storm Kickers from Esther. 45 attack, gives you inner limits for 20% HP, as well as 15% limit burst damage. So very strong TMR in that second slot to fill that second slot for the attack that you want, a little bit of bulkiness and that LB damage. Moving over to STMRs, though, we will have the option of upgrade package, just like the higher tier version of like the Hermes Sandals, because not only does it give you the 50% true to wield and the 40 flat attack, but it's also going to give you the ability of 40% attack on, or 50%, excuse me, no, 40% attack. 50% true to wield, 40 flat attack, 40% attack. Upgrade package does so many things. It discombobulated me. All right, so 40 flat, 40% and 50% true dual wield. Very strong there. You could also use the Ravenheart for the 20% attack, as well as Demon Killer and Bird Killer. Both of those are very strong options, a little bit better than the Hermes Sandals. Now, moving away from gear and accessories and weapons, we're going into the materia selection. It's going to be LB damage and attack materia. We have Courage to move on, which is going to be AC Cloud's own TMR, 60% attack and 30% limit burst damage. It's going to be by far his strongest option when it comes to the combination of attack and LB damage, but you can't stack it, so you need more materia that do a very similar thing to the Courage to move on. Now, the other ones that we can look at are War Goddess's Insignia Plus. This is from the new Trial of Asura, 40% attack, 30% LB damage. The normal War Goddess's Insignia, 30% attack, 30% LB damage. We have the Astrals Protection here, 40% attack and magic and 30% LB damage. We don't really care about the magic, so that's another 40% attack, 30% LB damage. Very similar to the War Goddess Insignia Plus. And then we have, obviously, Heart Overcoming Hatred, which is 50% LB damage, 1.5 LB gauge crystals per turn, as well as Squall Super TMR for 50% LB damage, well, 55% LB damage, and a little bit of LB gauge fill as well. Now, let's move on over to our builds here. The builds are looking pretty powerful at the end of the day here. We have some pretty strong builds. The first one we're going to be going over is the non-super TMR at all builds whatsoever, and this is going to be showcasing the Ancient Sword and the Darksteel Destroyer. These builds are factoring in, you know, some external buffs. You're going to have some imbues and perils if you'd like to, as well as the LB damage buff of 100 that he has from his limit burst here. So this is going to be the first one here. This is going to be Cloud, FF7 Advent Children. We have Ancient Sword, Darksteel Destroyer, Erdwin Coronet, King Rain's Armor, Storm Kickers, Hermes Sandals, Courage to move on, War Goddess Insignia Plus, the Astrals Protection, and Heart Overcoming Hatred equipped with Diablos. This is going to get him to 275% Human Slayer instead of the 300% here, but this is going to be a good budget way to build him. He's going to be pretty easy to be built against humans if you're going up against something that isn't a human, that isn't a machine, that he doesn't have base killers for. You're going to be dropping out some of the LB damage gear for more killer gear, right? If you're fighting plants, you're going to change all of that sort of materia, etc. So you get more plant killer in the build because you are balancing attack percent, true dual wield, LB damage, and then whatever enemy type you're fighting against. You're balancing all of those things out. Don't forget your killers, guys, when you're making builds. These are just examples, and we're against a human in all of these. Now, the next one that we're going to be taking a look at is going to be no STMRs except for his own STMR. All right, in this example. So he's going to have the Fusion Sword, and we're going to give him the Dark Ragnarok plus, just so you can see, right, what a well-geared character could look like that doesn't need entirely super TMRs. The Dark Ragnarok plus is going to be something that you can make from Dark Visions. Eventually, you need to do a Dark Visions, 4, 5, 6 times before you can get up there and start doing the big Dark Ragnaroks, especially depending on where you're placing. But Heaven Shrine Cloud's going to help you out to get those higher tier scores because his damage is just so high. So we have Fusion Sword, Dark Ragnarok plus, still here with the Erdwin Coronet, still here with King Rain's Armor, Storm Kickers, Hermes Sandals, coming in, Courage to move on, War Goddess's Insignia Plus, Heart Overcoming Hatred, and then this time we're using, actually, check this out, Brave Soul of all things, Brave Soul, which gives you, I think, like 30% attack and 25% human killer, which caps us exactly out at 300 human killer. In the build there, it was exactly 400% attack there. So that was it's pretty weird what can be like technically part of your best in slot for this stuff, because we're using a super TMR in a Dark Ragnarok here with some item world rolls in. We're using Brave Soul of all things in this particular circumstance, and after that buff he's at 4,000 attack, so a little bit better than the old one, not substantially better in the attack, but a little bit better, and we do get that little bit extra killer in our build and a little bit extra limit burst damage there. Now the final one, no holds barge, all of the STMRs in the game. We're using Supreme Sword of Light. All right, this is I almost call him Erdwin. 11's Super TMR. It's going to give us that extra 5% damage that you're not going to see in his attack. It's going to be 5% more, though, because of the way, right? We talked about the weapon variants on that weapon. Fusion Sword, Red Hellebore. No longer using Erdwin Coronet because they have so much LB damage. We're actually capped on it, so we're going to use a higher attack headpiece here. Grand Reverie instead of King Reigns because we've gotten that LB damage from our second weapon, right? We're using 2 weapons with 50% limit burst damage. So we drop 20 from our head, we drop 30 from our body, we drop 50 in total to get 50 from the weapon so we can get more attack. That's what this builder is doing here. We have upgrade package instead of, you know, the old Hermes Sandals for the extra 40% attack. Storm Kickers, once again, Courage to Move On, Weapon Specialist for a lot of Man-Eater with some attack percent of 60% there. Then we have Lionheart and then Heart Overcoming Hatred. This gets us to overcap on Man-Eater actually, so we hit the 300%, no problem. We're capped on attack. We have the 400% LB damage. This is because 300% cap and 100% from his self buff when he uses his limit burst. That's how we did all of the builds, and that's what we're aiming for there. So his attack is actually very similar to the previous build, right? 4,022 to 4,043. Only thing we've really gained is 25% LB damage. We have the same amount of killer, and we got that 5% extra variance. So you can see that he can actually put up some nice numbers. Now this is going to change based on what sort of enemy types you are fighting against, but against humans and machines, he actually does very well. And there's not a huge amount of difference between a super high top end build versus a build that has a couple of stmrs in it. So that's good news. That's good news. He's pretty easy to build, like we said in the review, and he does get a little bit better, you know, with the little bit more love you put in him, the little bit better he gets there. But that's going to be AC Cloud, maximum damage, all the gear you guys be looking at for him, right? We're prioritizing attack and true dual wield as well as limit burst damage and the killers for the fight that you're approaching and using him in. That's the best way to build pretty much every character in the game, right? Figure it out. It's going to be a balance between the stats they need and the killers they need and the sort of LB damage if they're an LB character, all of that good stuff there. So thank you guys once again for spending a little bit of your time here today. If you found this helpful, let me know what you've been using down there and what you're going to be using now, what sort of weird things that you found in your gear set so you can start making your Cloud a damage machine. Until then, guys, thank you so much for the support, especially those of you via Patreon and YouTube channel members. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there, having a little bit of fun. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, guys.